everybody, welcome back to my channel Learn with Virali. I'm Virali, your guide on this PMP adventure. If you are new to my channel, I'm Virali, a certified PMP professional helping people to pass their PMP exams on the very first try. So if you are not subscribed to my channel yet, make sure to subscribe as it helps me to create more such kind of videos and offer help to the community. In today's video, we are starting with our mini mock exam series where we are taking the actual pressure of the examination day and converting it into a productive practice. So today I'll be presenting 15 challenging question scenarios and I'll be asking you to set a timer aside, making sure you track how much time you spend for each of the questions so that you can understand any pitfalls that you need to clear out before the actual examination day arrives. So let's get started. So let's start with the first question. A project manager is leading a new software development project. Several stakeholders have different expectations about the final deliverable. What document should the project manager refer to clarify the project scope? Options are Work Breakdown Structure or WBS, Project Charter, Project Scope Statement, or Requirements Documentation. So let us first quickly summarize what each of these documents refer on. We can start with Project Charter. So as soon as the project is authorized is something when the Project Charter is in place. So Project Charter is the first step. So definitely this is not something that the project manager is going to review. So we are just going to cancel out this particular option as Project Charter is not the right choice. Moving on to the work breakdown structure. So work breakdown structure is definitely going to help us in kind of breaking down the work into different set of components. So definitely that is not going to help us to resolve this conflict which is being discussed over here amongst different stakeholders. So definitely WBS is not the right option choice. Moving on to project scope statement. So scope definitely explains us what is the work or what is the task that needs to be accomplished. So I'll keep this aside and talk about requirement documentation. So requirement documentation do list the requirements based on different viewpoints, but that is definitely not going to help us to resolve the conflict that currently exists in this problem. So the correct option choice over here is going to be the scope statement, or option C is going to be marked as the right answer. Question number 2. During the project execution, a team member informs the project manager that a critical activity will be delayed by 2 weeks. Which document should the project manager update first? The options are risk register, project schedule, issue log, or the change log. Now the thing to note here is the thing that has been reported by the team member is something which is critical activity, making sure that the project manager understands the priority in terms of it being delayed by 2 weeks, which is definitely gonna be a major problem to reach the final deadline assigned for the project. And as a project manager, you are supposed to update one document right after understanding this particular priority or this particular problem that you discussed with your team members. So we can say that whenever the delay is reported, it is definitely going to be an issue that has already occurred and not a risk which is definitely going to be uncertain. So the issue should be first documented in the issue log, and after that the project manager can likely update the schedule based on the change requests that are being made and then those being approved later on. So currently the very first document that the project manager should update would be nothing other than the issue log over here. Please don't confuse yourself with updating a risk register or an issue log, because risk registers usually are updated whenever there is a possibility of a particular event to occur or a negative event to happen based on certain assumptions. But the given problem over here or the given situation over here already has a problem because of which the critical activity is going to be delayed by 2 weeks. So the event has already occurred over here, and that's where that's an issue. So that has to be updated in the issue log. Question number 3. A project manager is using earned value analysis and has the following information: PV equals to $120,000, EV, which is earned value, which is equal to $100,000, and AC, which is the actual cost, is given as $150,000. So what is the SPI for this particular scenario presented to us? Options are 0.83, 0.67, 1.20 or 1.50. So here we can use the shortcut or the simplified mathematical tricks without the need to use a calculator, which I already did explain in my previous video, which I'll be linking it over here. So do check that out for understanding how you can get these kind of questions solved within fraction of seconds without using the calculator. So now here we are supposed to find out the value of SPI. SPI is nothing but EV divided by the value of PV, which is the planned value. So here we have $100,000, which we are going to be dividing it with $120,000 as the value of PV. So if we do this, we know that the numerator is smaller than the denominator. That means it is definitely going to be less than 1, and it is going to be somewhere closer to 1 rather than a little bit far away from 1. So for this particular question, my answer is going to be 0.83. If you even solve it using calculator, you are still going to get 0.8 or approximately 0.83 to be precise. So this means that it indicates that the project is behind the schedule as per the plan, because the value of SPI is less than 1. That means the project is typically behind the schedule, or on the negative aspect, that you need to speed up with different tasks for the project to be accomplished on a given deadline. Question number 4. Which of the following is not typically included in the project management plan? Please try to understand. Here we are being asked something which is not included in the PMP plan. So the options are scope baseline, schedule baseline, vendor invoices, and cost baseline. So we'll try to understand these things one by one, but first, always keep in mind that whenever you are dealing with any kind of invoices, that those are typically a part of project document as a whole, but not a part of PMP plan. Understanding that PMP plan is typically going to consist of different sets of components that you need to kind of understand with. May include like scope, may include like schedule. You also have something in regards to the performance measurements and like everything in regards to the planning purposes for that particular project. But for storing the invoices, it is always going to be separate, as it needs to be tracked based on the cost purposes or actual spendings to be calculated and understood how the project is performing and everything. So always remember that any kind of invoice is always not going to be a part of PMP plan. So accordingly, the correct answer over here has to be vendor invoices. 5. During the risk identification, a project manager wants to ensure the team considers unusual or unlikely risks. So which technique would be most helpful? Now here you are supposed to select the best possible answer out of the given option choices. So you have Delphi technique, you have SWOT analysis, documentation reviews, or assumption and constraint analysis. Now here the very important or the thing you need to consider is the keywords which are given over here, which is nothing but unusual or unlikely risks. Something like this is supposed to be considered given in the question. So if we are trying to dig deeper based on the given cultural set of team members, wherein sometimes the team members might speak up, sometimes not, we need to find out all the edge case scenarios, making sure that we have everything documented in place, and also would have plans later on to mitigate those risks before they occur. So in that case, we need to understand each of these techniques that are given over here. Let's start with SWOT analysis. So SWOT analysis is definitely going to be comparing the strengths and the weaknesses, typically not reaching to all use cases or all edge cases that we want in this case. Coming to documentation reviews, definitely it is going to be helping us to understand the things that had happened before in the past or in the previous sprints, but it's not going to help us to find out the unlikely scenarios that we need to dig in given the particular question. And the last one that we have is assumption and constraint analysis. So it is definitely gonna be based on the constraints that we have currently, and the assumptions that we are assuming based on the given project settings might not help us identify a risk that might kind of emerge in the open discussions due to the team dynamics taking into consideration. So the Delphi technique is the correct answer or the option choice that you are supposed to select here. So basically the Delphi technique is an anonymous expert opinion which is gathered in rounds to prevent group thinking and encourage consideration of all different kinds of possibilities, including usual and unusual or maybe controversial views. So that is the most likely or the best technique given the current scenario that we are trying to solve. So the correct answer over here is Delphi technique. Question number 6. A stakeholder with high power but low interest in the project is classified as keep satisfied, manage closely, monitor, or keep them informed. So the basic thing that we have to understand as per the power grid analysis from the examination perspective is that whenever we have a stakeholder who has the high power but is least interested or maybe have a low interest in the project, we need to make sure that we keep them satisfied, typically not overwhelming them with more information at any cost. So the stakeholders who have high power and high interest will be managed closely. But if we have the stakeholders who are having high power but low interest, would be a kind of stakeholder that could significantly impact the project, and that's where we just need to keep them satisfied based on the project requirements. So we don't need to overwhelm them more with the set of informations being bombarded to them. So the correct answer over here is to keep them satisfied. Question number 7. A project manager is working on a construction project and needs to determine the earliest time an activity can start without delaying the project. So which calculation is this? Is it a float? Is it early start? Is it late start? Or is the free float? So let us discuss each of these one by one. So let us first get started with the late start. So basically, late start represents the latest time an activity can take without delaying the project's end date. So typically, it's the latest time or the time required when one activity finishes and the next starts without the delay added to it. So it's pretty much gonna give you the activity wherein the next activity can start, like what day the next activity can start based on a given numbers for that particular workflow. Talking about early start. So early start is the earliest an activity can begin. Float, or we can also call it as total float, is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the entire project. So that is being calculated as late start minus early start. So that is LS minus ES. That is the actual formula for calculating float or total float. Whereas free float is the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the early start of any activity which is after gonna be performed of that particular activity. So we typically call it as any successor activity. So the correct answer over here is gonna be late start. 8. Which process involves determining, documenting, and managing stakeholder needs to meet project requirements? The options are collect requirements, define scope, create WBS, and validate scope. So let us start discussing each of these topics one by one to understand which document stores what. So let's start with define scope. Define scope actually develops the detailed description of the project and the product. So basically, it is not gonna contain each and everything. Not the right choice for this particular question. So I'm just gonna cross it off and then move on to create WBS. Now, what does create WBS do? WBS is nothing but the work breakdown structure. So WBS is gonna subdivide the entire project deliverable into smaller set of components. So definitely not gonna help us to do everything mentioned in the question, like determining, documenting, and managing the stakeholder needs. Coming to validate scope. So validate scope actually formalizes the acceptance of the completed project deliverables. So it is just going to validate everything not a right option choice for this particular question. So here the correct answer is option A, which is collect requirements. Collect requirements is going to help us to do different things like process of determining, documenting, and managing the stakeholder needs. Question number 9. A project manager is using a pull-based scheduling approach where work is pulled from a backlog on team's capacity basis. So this approach is most closely associated with which of the methods given over here? Critical path method, Kanban, program evaluation and review technique, which is PERT, or its critical chain method. Now, just to let you know, there is no method named as critical chain method. So I'm just gonna cross it off right away. Talking about critical path method, critical path is going to help us to understand how long it will take to complete this particular project with the given set of activities. So definitely not associated with the pull-based scheduling approach. Now we are remain with Kanban and program evaluation and review technique. So program evaluation and review technique typically uses the learnings that we have had based on different sprints that has been performed. So definitely not the right option choice for this particular scenario. So we are just remained with Kanban, which is the right option choice for this particular question, as Kanban is a pull-based scheduling approach where the work is going to be pulled from the backlog based on the team's capacity, or how much work does the team do in a given particular week based on the number of members in the team and how much they can achieve based on the tasks that are assigned to them. So that is nothing but the pull-based approach that uses similar kind of scheduling approach. That is the pull approach for this particular question. Question number 10. During project execution, which technique is used to bring future cost performance back in line with the project management plan? Is it reserve analysis, earned value management, cost aggregation, or forecasting? So let us take this one by one. Like, this is a little bit tricky in the given question based on the terms that has been used here. So let us start talking about forecasting. What does forecasting do? Forecasting predicts the future performance based on the past performance of the project, whereas the reserved analysis is going to examine how much do we have as a part of our contingency reserves. So definitely not the right option choice. Based on forecasting, no. Based on reserve analysis, not a right option choice as well. Talking about cost aggregation. Cost aggregation is definitely not going to help us to determine or to give us an alert saying that the project is now falling behind and we need to get it back in line or on track to reach towards the project end or maybe the finish line with the given budget to us. So cost aggregation, definitely a big no, but it's only EVM or earned value management that is going to be the right option choice for this particular question, as EVM specifically identifies when the corrective action is needed to bring that cost performance back in line with the plan through different kinds of performance measurement as well as the trend analysis. So it is always going to be earned value management. 11. A project manager notices that team members are avoiding conflict and agreeing too quickly with each other during planning meetings. Now, according to the Tuckman's model, which stage of team development is this team experiencing? Is it forming, storming, norming, or performing? Now, all of us know the 5 stages of Tuckman's ladder, which is starting with storming. We can say that storming involves conflict and competition. So if the team members are avoiding conflict and agreeing too quickly, it is not going to be the storming stage. Now, if we talk about the norming stage, norming is going to work like deciding the rules or maybe involves certain kind of cohesion and consensus building. So that is definitely not going to be a time when people agree too quickly and avoid conflicting talks. So norming, not a right option choice. Talking about performing, performing involves high productivity and autonomous problem solving skills as a part of Tuckman's ladder. So that is not going to be something that would be a part of team members who are avoiding conflicts and agreeing too quickly with each other. So So that is nothing but in the forming stage that this happens whenever team members try to avoid conflict and agree with each other pretty much fast. Number 12. A project manager is closing a project phase and needs to ensure that all the deliverables have been completed and accepted. So which document should be reviewed? Requirement traceability metrics, deliverables acceptance form, project charter, or work performance reports. Now, if you are trying to validate whether you have completed everything as a part of the deliverables that you are supposed to complete for that particular phase or the sprint, then in that case, you need to review different documents, but the specified or the most appropriate document that needs to be referred to is the deliverables acceptance form. So that is the form which is going to be linked to requirement traceability metrics. So both ways, those are correct, but we have to select the most appropriate answer over here as deliverables acceptance form. That is something which is going to be reviewed by the stakeholders and would be considered as a primary document whenever you are trying to kind of double check whether you have completed all the requirement deliverables in place before closing out that particular phase of the project. 13. During the risk response planning, a project manager decides to accept a risk without taking any action. So what type of risk response strategy is this? Is it to accept the risk? Is it to avoid the risk, or to transfer or mitigate the risk? So please understand that the project manager is accepting this particular type of a risk whenever they are doing the risk response planning. So we need to understand that acceptance is a risk response strategy that is going to be used whenever the team decides to acknowledge that particular risk without taking any action, either because there is no suitable response available for that particular risk, or is it going to be within our tolerance levels that we can take those actions and can get rid of that particular risk. So that is when the acceptance is going to be used. Basically, that is something similar to happening to something that has been given in this particular question. Talking about mitigation. Mitigation actually reduces the probability or impact, basically whatever impact it is going to cause towards the project based on the kind of risk that is being talked about. So no, that is not the right option choice over here. Talking about transferring the risk, transfer is typically to shift the impact of that particular risk to some other place, maybe to the third party or something like that. And avoidance typically eliminates the threat by changing the project plan. So the correct option choice, since the project manager decides to accept this particular risk, we need to understand that this is nothing but acceptance. So the correct answer over here is acceptance. Team. A new team member asks the project manager to explain the difference between the milestone and an activity. The best explanation that can be given by the project manager could be which of the following? So option A states, a milestone has a fixed date while an activity can be rescheduled. Option B is, a milestone is a significant point or event with zero duration while an activity consumes times and resources. Option C is, a milestone is externally imposed while activities are determined by the team. Option D is, a milestone is only used for zero reporting towards the senior management while activities are used for the team purposes. So in this case, we have to keep in mind the fundamental definitions of what is a milestone and what is an activity. So basically, a milestone can be anything with even a zero duration. Basically, it is defined by the team members or decided internally in the project teams. So it can be even used outside of like executive reporting purposes. So a milestone is a significant point or an event with zero duration while an activity consumes time and resources. So that is the right option choice given the definition of milestones and activities. 15. A project manager is developing the project charter. Which of the following would not typically be found in this document? Please try and understand. You are developing a project charter and you are now understanding what is included inside the project charter. Is it the project purpose, high level requirements, work breakdown structure, or the success criteria? So the thing to understand is the project charter typically includes project purpose, a high-level requirement, a high-level risk, as well as the summary of milestones, the success criteria, and the assigned project manager with their authority level. So this is something that is included inside the project charter, whereas the WBS is going to be created separately whenever the scope is going to be planned later on after the project charter. So it's not going to be included inside the project charter when we talk about work breakdown structure. So the correct option choice for this particular question, since we are supposed to select not typically found in the project charter, is the work breakdown structure. Great job on completing this 20-minute mock exam session. Let's quickly review how did you do. So first, let's say what was your score out of 15. If you got 12 or more correct, you are pretty much on point, scoring 80% above. So you are in a great shape. If your score was somewhere around getting 9 to 11 questions correct, that means you are at 60 to 75%. So you're on the right track, but you might need more practice to reach towards the goal. And if you got fewer than 9 questions correct, do not worry. That is the reason I have started creating this mini mock exam sessions or mini mock exam videos, which is going to help you better prepare for the actual PMP exam. So if you found this content useful, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, as it's definitely going to help me to reach out to more audience. And please make sure to download the set of question PDF from the description below for additional practice as well as for future review of these questions altogether. If you found this helpful, please hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next video.